Hello and welcome to The Final Whistle. We're at episode 2, back again from last week. I'm your host, Simon Kiszczuk. I'm here with Kyle Watson.
How's it going?
Kyle Cushman.
How's it going?
And Nigel Gubetchkin.
What's good, everybody?
So we're going to get right into it. So we had a big weekend. We had a big day today, too. We're going to kick that off with today's games in the Champions League. We saw the first set of games in the second leg of the round of 16 of this year's UEFA Champions League. So tough look for Kyle Cushman's Dortmund.
Yeah, just a little bit, hey?
Going into the game with a mountain to climb, 3-0 loss away in the first leg. Nothing they can't handle, you might think. No away goals scored by either team after the first leg. And, I didn't see the game. Kush, I'll let you...
Yeah, so Dortmund looked strong in the first half, attacking. Obviously needed to get back those 3 goals, but Hugo Lloris was incredible today. Dortmund just couldn't get anything past him. They had 4 opportunities about halfway through the first half where they had like back-to-back-to-back corners where they had really good opportunities, especially Mario Götze. He got a nice shot off, but Lloris got a hand to it, and it was just whenever Dortmund would get an opportunity, it would be a cross that was like a foot high, go over somebody's head, or it would be an insane save from Lloris. And when it got to halftime and Dortmund didn't have anything on the board, it was basically done. And then within 5 minutes, the game was done when Kane scored. So
crucial away goal there.
Exactly.
Even harder to come back from. Quick, I'll hear from all of you. Is Dortmund's season over? Out of the Champions League now?
Whoa.
Tied on the title race. They dropped more points this weekend.
I don't think you can say it's over because they're still in a title race. I think in a way, Kush, I don't know, maybe you can agree with me, but maybe this loss is a good thing because now they can just devote their time solely to the league.
I mean, if you're looking at it positively, that's the only thing you can really take away.
I don't know. I think maybe they can there's no more midweek games. You can focus a lot more. I don't know if you guys are still in the DF Poco.
No, we are not.
No? Okay. So, all you have to look at now is the league, which is really good. So, I mean, I think you guys are in a good spot.
From that perspective,
yeah.
Being able to focus on the one thing, that being the league, I think that's probably the only positive you can take from this. But it's a tough situation. It's been a rough return from the winter break, and Dortmund need to get things back on track quickly, or else Bayern's going to pass them quick.
Yeah, so that's all we need to hear about that game.
That's about it.
Yeah,
that's all I really want to talk about.
Big game, huge upset. The holders, Real Madrid, came into the game, to their home game, the home leg of this game, with a 2-1 advantage, looking pretty solid. All of a sudden, Ajax 2-0 up early on. By the end of the game, it finishes 4-1. The score is 5-3 on aggregate. Fantastic performance from a very young, inexperienced Ajax team, captained by the notoriously young Matthias de Ligt, who has been linked with countless moves away. For obvious reason, he was rock solid at the back. I know Kyle Watson wants to see him at Manchester City next season. What did we think about that game?
Well, I think really to get a foothold on the game, all Real Madrid had to do was play solid for 15 minutes. Play compact defensively, and they did kind of the complete opposite. I mean, like 2 quick goals like that, and suddenly it's a completely different game.
Yeah, I don't think the injury to Vinicius completely killed them. I think he's obviously he's young, he's got a lot to learn still, but I think he's very creative in his attack. He's very creative going forward for them, and as soon as he went off, everything was going through Karim Benzema, who I think is still one of the better attacking players in world football. I think he's still overlooked, but he's just nothing. He doesn't have the creativity that Vinicius has, and I think that's what they were missing in the final third. And ultimately, I think Sergio Ramos being out also definitely is probably one of the best center backs in the world. Being out never helps you. So, I mean, those are just 2 big losses to them today, and obviously a big loss in general is in Ajax. Now,
let's not overlook how Ajax played either.
Very
I
true.
think a lot of people are going to be talking about, Madrid this, Madrid that, and kind of overlook how Ajax played. They looked really, really solid over both legs, especially at the Bernabeu. That's a team that I would not want to draw going into the next round.
No.
Yeah, I mean, we saw them in the reverse fixture a couple weeks ago. They looked very solid. They arguably unlucky to come away with a loss there at all. Had a goal disallowed. They could have gone into this second leg level. So they had a tough job to do. It's never easy to go away to the Santiago Bernabeu. Real Madrid haven't been great there of late. Obviously, they lost a couple of games, back-to-back El Clasicos just this week at home, so that's not a good look for them either. But just hugely impressive performance by those Ajax youngsters, and I thought it was a really interesting game for Dusan Tadic. He ran the show, 2 assists in the first 2 goals, and then had the third goal there to go 3-0 up. And it's interesting to see these former Premier League players go abroad and perform this well in the Champions League. He wasn't very good at Southampton.
No,
he was okay. He was solid, but he was never linked with anything big. And now here he is dismantling Real Madrid. So I don't know. It's kind of
pretty funny how that works sometimes.
That's football for you, I guess. But
I think this Ajax team can be one that, you always see those articles. It's like the where are they now? The 2000 and this team from, this team. And I think in 10 years, people will say, where are they now? The 2019 Ajax team. Because unfortunately, I don't think they're going to be able to keep Matthijs de Ligt. I don't think they're going to be able to keep Tagliafico. Obviously, Frankie de Jong already leaving. So all these players who are absolute world-class youngsters are going to be leaving them, I have to assume. And I think it's just going to be really interesting to see in 10 years how many world-class players played on this 2019 Ajax team. And I think it's going to be a pretty special thing to look back on, too.
Yeah, it could be a lot like we saw 2 or 3 seasons ago now with the Monaco team that made a deep run in the Champions League and took down Paris, who had been dominant in the French league and obviously won that French title and made it all the way to the semifinals. But then the next summer right away, none of their promising young players are there anymore. They've all been picked off for huge amounts of money. Obviously very talented players, and now lots of them are playing at the biggest clubs in the world. So it's unfortunate for Ajax, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a similar thing go down here.
Another comparison to that would be that 2013 Borussia Dortmund team that made it all the way to the final.
That's the one I was thinking about too. Yeah.
That could be an interesting storyline if they make it that far.
So do you guys think we'll see Ajax? How far will they go?
It really depends on who they draw in the next round.
Yeah, the draw's the biggest part. And if they draw maybe the winner of the Porto-Roma match, then okay, maybe it's easy. But if they draw the winner of the Bayern-Liverpool match, right, you know what I mean?
Real Madrid, though, they did it's a huge game that they and a big marker they just put down.
I mean, I think the European crown is certainly up for grabs. If you can walk into the Real Madrid stadium with that no fear and score 4 goals, like who I think all teams should be afraid. I don't think it really matters who they draw. I think they can give anybody a scare.
Yeah, so Ajax, huge credit to them. Also, a lot to do with Real Madrid. I'll get everybody's opinion here. What's going on there? What's going wrong? They're now crashed out of this competition. They're obviously the holders. They were in a back-to-back-to-back. Nobody expected them to go out this early, even though they were shaky or have been shaky all year in their domestic league. So what's going wrong?
They can't score goals, and I think part of that is because they lost one of the best goal scorers in the world in Cristiano Ronaldo, which never helps.
I think you can safely say the best goal scorer in the world.
I'd like to say one of the best.
Who else is up there then, Nigel?
Messi for sure.
Okay.
When he wants to score goals, he can.
Okay.
Pure goal scorer.
I think you could argue, because it's a different league, Harry Kane might be one, Sergio Aguero, players like that. It's a tougher league.
I'll take it.
But it's not something I'm trying to debate. I'm just saying. But yeah, for me, not having the goal scoring, because in a game like today where you go down 2 goals early, everything's gone wrong, you can give the ball to Ronaldo and he can have a moment of brilliance and he can get you back on the score sheet, get you back level on aggregate. And you just saw today that they were missing, like I said, that creativity in the final third. They didn't have someone who could just pull something out of a hat. I mean, obviously Marco Asensio had a pretty nice goal, but it just wasn't enough for them. It was maybe a little too late. So I think they just need more creativity and more goal scoring, which, yeah.
To me, they're a team in transition. Moving on from a player like Ronaldo is obviously a massive, massive hit to your club. And they didn't really bring in anybody to replace that. They just kind of were like next man up. And if they were being realistic...
They did make a couple big signings. Vinicius Jr. didn't come cheap, and Mariano Diaz came back.
For Vinicius, I think that's more of like what I'm about to get to, in that they're looking to move on to the next Real Madrid
generation. Yeah,
Exactly, it's the next generation, and so Vinicius is like a part of that, even though he was technically bought over the course of this year. To me, he's a part of that next generation that's coming in, rather than being a direct replacement. He's going to be a replacement for Ronaldo over the course of many, many years. And he's not that kind of player yet. He'll probably get there, but it's a transitional year. And I think if people were being realistic, something like this was expected to happen. But the way that everything's played out has just kind of been incredible.
I mean, you're Real Madrid. You don't think that they would want to compete every year. I found it struck me with awe that they didn't make any moves this summer, and that makes me think that they might have wanted to hold out this summer to get somebody like Eden Hazard that perhaps didn't want to come this summer, rather than just, splashing money on whoever was available. So I don't know. I don't think they're gonna go for a full on rebuild. Obviously, a lot of people are hovering around that like 30 to 32 mark, but like this is still a team with some of the best players in the world in every single position. So I think if you get one or two more Galactico signings back in, I think they're right back in it. Because if you look at the past 3 years, I think only 1 year they won the La Liga. There was like a lot of games that they should have won that they didn't win, and they still managed to pull off the Champions League. So I think even going into this game, having basically been knocked out of the league and the Copa del Rey, a lot of people were still expecting them to make a good Champions League run. But
well, yeah, and they had been solid in the group stage. They obviously showed that they were still a fantastic European team. But I think it was bound to happen for me because they lost a world superstar, biggest player in the world, arguably, in Cristiano Ronaldo for not a huge, a big fee, but they didn't use it to replace him. And with a club like Real Madrid, you don't expect them to have rebuilding years. They might go through players might come and go, but you expect them to be able to spend the money to continue with their success without falling off like this. So, this season is a huge disappointment for them in pretty much every any definition of the word. They're out of the title race. They're out of the Champions League. They're not looking at any trophies.
They're not going to win a single trophy.
No
this year,
trophies
which
this year.
is crazy.
Yeah, for a team like Real Madrid, but also they lost Ronaldo, but Modric's not getting any younger. Sergio Ramos won't be as good as he is for too long now. Marcelo's been out for a long time now. That's not helping them that much. Bale has been very inconsistent. Benzema has never been a true goal scorer. He's more of a creator of chances and assists. He prefers to do that instead of being in the box 24/7 trying to get those poachers goals. Because lately Ronaldo filled that role and they haven't replaced him.
I think it's very telling that Vinicius Jr. is 18 years old, correct?
Yeah.
That he's the one that's creating all the chances. You would think somebody on that team, especially Bale, is the one a lot of people look to, would want to step up and fill the giant shoes that Ronaldo left.
Bale's been pretty dreadful this year, if I'm being honest. Like, I think a lot of people expected this is the year that Gareth Bale comes into his shoes at Real. There's no more Ronaldo to sit behind. This is his club now. He's the best attacker here. And to me, he's been a pretty big letdown with the potential he had to,
Well, he's never really gotten to the level that people
expected,
wanted him to, maybe expected or at least hoped he would get to.
Yeah.
And right now the jury's kind of out. Was he a success at his time there? Has he been a flop?
I wouldn't say a flop, but I also wouldn't say it's a success. He's just been an average,
which doesn't really fly for Real Madrid. So by their standards, I might argue that he has been a flop. They spent a bunch of money on him, and he never reached those prolific goal numbers that they wanted from him. But obviously 2 injuries in the first half today. Just going back to today's game, that doesn't help. Management I think is going to change after this season, or if not
today.
Sooner. We'll see about that, but. Where is Asensio? Why is he not a starter? Where is Isco? Isco's nowhere to be found. Obviously a huge fan favorite, so that's not going to fly well for those faithful Real Madrid fans. that are still not convinced by Santiago Solari. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's enough Real Madrid talk for now. They just this Champions League exit just caps off a pretty horrible week. 2 El Clasico losses with no goals scored, both home games for them. Barcelona are now 12 points above them and 7 points clear at the top of the table in the Spanish domestic league. So you'd think a team like Barcelona, they're not going to drop too many points between now and the end of the season. And, yeah, you know, it's the first time in many, many years, I don't have the number here, but Barcelona have now surpassed Real Madrid in total El Clasico victories, 96-95 now. So that's also not a good look for them. So we'll move on now towards the Premier League for the first time today. So there were a few big games. Biggest, I would say, and Nigel would probably agree with me, the North London Derby was bright and early on Saturday morning.
Yep.
Interestingly, the very first time Tottenham have drawn a game in the Premier League this season.
That's a crazy stat.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
We've got nine games left, I believe, in this season.
It was also they hadn't. I think it was their first in 36, which is a full Premier League season, because at the end of last year they hadn't drawn either, which is really crazy to me. I mean, I kind of respect that. I don't respect Tottenham at all, but I respect that about them, that, you know, they're a win-or-loss club. You know, as much as it pains me to say it, I really like what Pochettino's done there. Since he's taken over, they've been equal, if not better, than Arsenal, as much as that is hard to admit.
I would argue they've been better.
Yeah, you could definitely argue that. Like I said, I think he's a world-class manager, and what he's done with some of the players there is absolute quality. But focusing on the match this weekend, I think both teams will be happy with the result. I think Spurs will definitely be more happy, just considering they conceded a penalty in the 89th minute and they didn't lose the game, which is always a nice plus when you concede a pen that late. Obviously, I was pretty upset with that, but if you told me before we'd go to Wembley and get a draw against Spurs, I wouldn't have been upset. So I'll take the point. I'm not really complaining too much. I don't know if anyone else really has anything that.
I just wanted to talk about what this meant for the title race. There's currently 5 points separating Chelsea in 6th from Tottenham in 3rd. United, Arsenal, and Chelsea are all 1 point apart, respectively. So that, I guess, it was a good result for Tottenham to stay in that 3rd Champions League spot. But I mean, all 4 of those teams will want to be playing in the Champions League next year for sure.
Absolutely.
Who do you think we're going to see?
Ooh.
There's a quick.
I
would say. I mean, obviously, Manchester City and Liverpool are going to be there.
I wouldn't be surprised to see 5. No.
Well, it depends who wins this time, or the Europa
League.
League.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Also, something of notice that City could get that ban from Champions League that has been talked about. I forget the whole standards of it, but there was a Champions League ban that would essentially make the top 4 teams after City, or if they were to finish second, it'd be the top 5 teams. But anyways,
there's absolutely nothing shaky going on in my club. I don't know what you're talking about.
But so if that were to be a thing, that would definitely shake things up. But going off top 4, I think we can all agree Liverpool, City, and then probably Tottenham.
Yeah,
it's
Tottenham.
Probably a safe bet to assume, and then it's really a dogfight between
Chelsea. Well, I mean, it's so close in there because you could say Arsenal, Tottenham, Chelsea, and Manchester United are all in with a shot now.
For sure.
For those last 1 or 2 Champions League places. So, yeah.
I personally would go with Arsenal.
Yes.
I just
think
think
to finish 4th.
Good man. Good
United
man,
are-
Kush.
They do love
United
that
are
4th
just on
spot.
such a hot run. I just don't see it sustaining for the rest of the season. And then for Chelsea, I'm sorry, it's just they're too inconsistent. And with all the stuff going around the club right now, I think that Arsenal's probably the safest bet.
Look, they've got a game in hand. They still have to play Brighton. You know,
That's fair.
If they played that, if they get the win there, they're up to 4th. They pass.
But
they
it's
leapfrog Arsenal and Manchester United.
You also have to look at toughest opponents left, and
Yeah.
for Arsenal, this is their last big game of the season, and I put big in big quotation marks because I mean against a top 6 team, but this is their last match that they have to play against one of the top 6 of England, which isn't to say that they're not gonna lose a stupid game to Swansea's not in the league, to like Everton in a couple of weeks or something, but I like looking at strength of schedule, Arsenal does have the easiest schedule left, which makes me optimistic. But I've also seen my club bottle so many things before, so wouldn't be surprised if we completely choke this as well. So
because you can finish all the way down in 6th.
Exactly.
Like, that's the
yeah.
thing. It's so tight now that United got their season back on track.
Exactly.
That they've jumped right back up. They were really far behind, and they got all the results they needed. They were. Are they still unbeaten in the Prem?
And the Prem under Solskjaer,
yeah. So that's incredible because he's picked up a just remarkable amount of points for a new manager coming in.
Yeah.
And now they're only 3 points behind Tottenham.
The most of any, I think, after 10 games for a new manager.
Yeah. I think
10 out of 12 points is what he got.
Yeah. And I found something pretty funny. Well, yeah, in a way it's funny. It was the first time a Man U manager has been named Manager of the Month since Fergie, which is
That's incredible.
That's crazy, right? Because
yeah.
they've had quality teams. Like Mourinho finished second with,
Nobody ever really liked Mourinho's United, though.
No, and obviously they had some terrible managers like Moyes and Van Gaal come in. I don't know, I just found it pretty funny that it took this long from when Fergie retired to finally have a Manager of the Month, which
no, that's really remarkable. I mean, it's not a big award or anything, but it's interesting to see that the management that they've brought in since Sir Alex has just been pretty abysmal. Until now, and they finally realized, I think, that the fans want a more homegrown manager. A legendary player for them was obviously a very, very good decision to bring in. Hats off to United, I guess. Speaking of managers, this weekend on Thursday, before the weekend games on Thursday, Fulham announced that they're parting ways with Claudio Ranieri after just about 3 months in charge. Sad to see him go. Obviously, he has a place in all of our hearts for bringing that title to Leicester City. He was in charge of 17 games. He only won 3. Not a good record. Fulham sit second bottom. A solid 8 points behind Cardiff City. It's not looking very good for them. So they brought in Scott Parker, who was also a former player. Played for plenty of teams all over the
Tottenham.
He's still pretty recently. He's only 38 years old now. He'll be the caretaker manager for the remainder of the season. Unfortunately, though, he couldn't pick up points in his first game, falling 2-1 to Chelsea.
You say unfortunately, but you don't care.
Unfortunately for Fulham,
it's not a bad result.
It's not bad.
Not. To score against Chelsea,
it was hard fought. It was better than we've seen for a bit from them. So maybe this will pick them up.
Unfortunately for Ranieri, as sentimental as he may be in the Premier League to all of us, and for most fans for the most part, you can't really argue that this wasn't a deserved sacking.
Yes.
I mean, when Fulham is that, their situation right now is completely dire. They need to turn it around now or else they're going down. And when you win 3 of 17 games in charge, there's only so much a club can kind of take before it's decision time.
Yeah, well, I would say, they tried to do this turnaround 17 games ago when they brought him in because this is already their 3rd manager of the season.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
And if you're going to take a bet on a manager to turn around your season, you can do worse than Ranieri.
I would argue that was a poor choice, actually.
Yeah,
because of what we saw him do at Leicester. He started one season, he had his full 12 months with the club, and then after they won the title, he lasted till Christmas time ish, and he was sacked because they weren't performing still. So he had just a remarkable time, but when he needed to pull them out of another scrap, he wasn't able to do it. And the season before they won the title, it was Nigel Pearson that saved them from relegation.
Good man, great name.
Yeah, so Pearson? I don't think he was a smart appointment because just given his track record in the Prem, it wasn't in keeping teams up. It was just this bizarre, remarkably heartwarming story of this ragtag group of players that could win it all. So, maybe he's done more than that. But when you look at his record in the Prem, I think it wasn't a great idea in the first place.
See, the way I look at it was why not? He hasn't had a chance in the Prem since the Leicester incident. And what do you have to lose if you're Fulham? You just got promoted. You kind of do have a lot to lose considering how much they put into that.
They do have a lot to lose.
They spent a lot of money on that team. So, in a way, they do have a lot to lose. But I don't know. I think it's a good signing. It gets fans to the games. It makes you a fan favorite within the Prem because everyone loves Ranieri. I think that's pretty well known. Like we were talking about. I don't know. Just sad to see his demise. You know, I miss like the smiley Ranieri.
Dilly-ding,
Yeah.
We're in the Champions League.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just straight up, it didn't work.
Yeah,
and now
just-
Fulham has to pull something quick.
It didn't work out. So, yeah, I mean, and we're seeing this sort of similar situation. I mean, it's all the time. Managers are always turning over, but is it smart at this time in the season? Do you stick with your manager? Do you give him trust? Do you hope and pray and give him everything he needs to stay up and stay in a fight, or do you throw him to the side and try to get some impact with a new one?
At the point they are, with how far back they are now, with so few games left, I think that they had to do something because I don't believe that Ranieri was really in their long-term plans unless he did something drastic. So the way that it all played out and the situation that they're in now, it was a given or a necessity for Fulham to make the move.
Because, yeah, I mean, I guess it depends. Like, in general, do you think it's a good idea at this stage in the season? Like, there's not very much time. You know, anything could happen, obviously, but you know, in this situation, maybe it was best that he go. But in general, like, if you were in charge, like, would you want, you know, if you're not in a good spot, obviously the first thing you look to is get rid of your manager, but that might not be the best choice.
I think in a lot of cases it is, just because I've seen so many times where teams are in a situation like Fulham, they fire their manager and then a new manager comes in. I've seen Roy Hodgson do it a couple of times. I've seen Big Sam do it a couple of times, where this new manager comes in. He just knows how to, he's not someone who's going to win you the league, but he's someone who knows how to get results, knows how to play defensively. And I think, yeah, like a good example is Big Sam. When he went into Southampton, when they were almost destined for, you know, relegation, he came in there with, I forget how many games they had left, and kept them afloat. So I think in a way it invigorates your squad. It gets them, you know, amped up.
And he's quite notorious for that now. He did it with Everton just last season.
Yeah.
Maybe they weren't headed for relegation. They're such a big club, but they spent a ton of money under Ronald Koeman, bought every midfielder they could find. Wasn't good spending. Anyway, he saved them from that slide. Just 2 or 3 seasons ago now, he saved Crystal Palace in a similar situation. Came in before Christmas. Sunderland before that.
Sunderland was crazy.
He has this amazing track record of keeping those teams up. So I think that a few months ago would have been a smarter hire for Fulham.
Absolutely.
Yeah, looking at it now, like, under most circumstances, I wouldn't agree with that kind of move. But the situation that they're in, where it's make or break for them for what league they're going to be in next year, it's something that you have to do to try and save yourselves to be in the Premier League next year.
Because they spent huge amounts of money, and you know they risk losing all that talent and all that investment right away going back down. Because lots of those players they signed from European teams that could have been
Schürrle,
Champions League, Europa
Schürrle's
League.
on loan, so he'll still be there.
Is it?
I don't think there's any way John Michael Seri stays.
That was the
Exactly.
next
So
one.
if you're linked with Barcelona, you sign for Fulham. Fulham goes down, and even Mitrovic, 10-goal season. You know, I'm sure someone like Breitner will want to scoop him up.
Yeah, well, Brighton could use a new striker. Glenn Murray is still plugging along, but we're not going to see that forever. Yeah, I mean, that'll happen pretty much every time a team gets relegated. Their team gets picked apart, but we don't usually see a team with this much raw talent in a place where they are right now. You know, they have, and they're still signing players. You know, they made some signings in January, and it's still not working. It's just, it doesn't seem to be turning around.
They just did too much. And when you do too much, sometimes it doesn't gel right away, and then it doesn't gel all season, and then you're back in the championship.
Because they're starting 11 from the championship to this season. I'm pretty sure it's like 8 different players, which is like...
That's so much turnover.
It's so much turn. Yeah, exactly.
The entire spine changed too. The keeper's different, center backs are different. The 2 central midfielders. Tom Kearney's barely been around. He had injury problems, but you know there are 2 holding midfielders in Zambo Anguissa and Jean-Michel Seri, both brand new signings this summer. You know, that's enough about Fulham. I don't think any of us want to talk about Fulham anymore. So we'll move on. Another big. Pretty big game over the weekend was the Liverpool-Everton in the Merseyside derby. Very underwhelming game. Liverpool dropped more points again. You know, they keep drawing, and that's really not what you want at this time of the season. Manchester City
Keep winning.
Keep winning.
And that's what you want.
They've been picking up little 1-0s the last few games. Mixed in with their 5-0, their typical batterings of teams. Liverpool missed the opportunity to go back on top, and now Manchester City are 1 point ahead. Drop more points. Do you guys think have they blown it? Is it over for them?
Watson, what do you think? I know what you're gonna say.
Well, I'll be modest. Kevin De Bruyne went off at half for Bournemouth, so that combined with no Fernandinho, no Laporte, Stones is just coming back to health, and Mendy, like, I'm not gonna make any rash statements. But I mean, like, I'm confident with the way we're playing. I think we're not kind of using all our energy. We're just going for these, nice, comfortable, solid wins. Like, Bournemouth didn't even get a shot across or anything on target or off target.
Still almost took points off you, though. I mean, that shows City's quality, that they can get the goal they need. They can score those goals. And that's what Liverpool needed against Everton. And, they found that in a pretty dramatic, arguably silly way last time they played Everton in the league. This season with that ridiculous double crossbar bounce in the 96th minute for your boy,
that game was crazy.
Divock Origi to score. Yep. So they needed that again, and it just didn't happen for them. So, yeah, I mean, that's...
I know people are getting on them for losing, but every time Everton and Liverpool play, it doesn't matter where they are in the standings. Both teams are going to play their best, probably one of their better games this season. It's just because there's that hatred for both teams, both being in Merseyside. I mean, obviously, not a great result for Liverpool, but going on the road and drawing against one of your biggest rivals who's in pretty okay form recently, I don't think it's the worst result ever. I think it's just because the time that they've had a couple consecutive draws now, it doesn't help. But I think overall, in the big grand scheme of things, this draw is okay. I think it's an okay, acceptable draw.
I would kind of disagree a bit. I think that overall they needed to pick up more points in that game, but as in isolation, going away to your bitter rival and getting a point, not bad at all.
Yeah, no, that's kind of what I'm trying to...
Yeah.
Did I word it? Yeah, might have worded it weird. Okay, that's what I was getting.
I'd be a little bit concerned, just because last 4 matches now, other than the thrashing of Watford, you've got 0-0 uninspiring against Bayern in the Champions League. Then you've got 0-0 uninspiring against Manchester United. And then you've got Everton 0-0 uninspiring.
Yeah, well, and maybe it's just a blip, though, because you see they beat Watford 5-0, obviously a lesser team, but when you look at the 3 teams they've drawn, they've shut them out. First of all, that's a good sign.
They shut out everyone, though.
They also drew West Ham and...
Well, yeah, I mean, if you look back, teams are going to draw, but these last games, if you look at them, Bayern Munich, huge European superpower, Manchester United doing very, very well at this stage in the season, and your bitter rivals from across town. When you look at it like that, maybe it's just a blip.
Yeah,
they've got more games coming up.
Those are the games that Manchester City won last year.
That's what I was going to say. If you're a team that's the quality to win the Premier League, those are the kind of the games that you need to win.
Yeah.
Those aren't the games that you get the 0-0 draws with. That's the game that you pull out a 1-0.
You do need the 1-0 there. Yeah, absolutely.
They do have a chance to turn around, though. They've got Burnley coming up, and then they've got the second leg against Bayern, and then after that they've got Fulham. So they've got a chance to, against 2 weaker sides.
Definitely should win both those prime games.
And then a big game in the Champions League. Those 3 games you can really turn things back around, get going again with a big result against Bayern and a couple weaker opponents. They can really get back on track.
Yeah, and I would say, Manchester City aren't perfect either. We've seen that instead of drawing games, they have been plain old losing games. They lost to Newcastle, Leicester, and Crystal Palace in fairly recent memory. So they're obviously not perfect either, and they are still competing in the FA Cup and the Champions League.
Yeah.
So we can't forget that. There's not much talk of it this season, but they are still on track for a quadruple.
They could freaking do a quadruple.
They could do a quadruple.
They could quad this up. Like
if their injuries come back in a favorable way, they're really short at the back right now. They need a left back and they need a center back pretty much now because Laporte was out, Fernandinho deputized and played some center back. Now he's out. They need to fill those gaps, and Stone's coming back is a huge help. Otamendi is suspended, I believe, for their second leg Champions League or second leg of their Champions League game.
Yeah.
So that's not great either. Yeah, I mean it's possible they'll drop points too. They've yet to play Spurs, so I don't think it's over yet, but it's a real title race.
It's really reminding me of, not as severe because it happened way later in the season, but it's really reminding me of 2012 when
the last time Liverpool almost won the league.
Yeah.
And
was 13-14.
Was that, or was it 13?
The Gerrard slip.
Yeah, was that? Okay, sorry, I couldn't remember if it was 2012, 13, or 2013. But it's really starting to feel like that again, where they were so dominant all year long. They scored all these goals with their top forwards, with their Salah. Back then it was with their Suarez. And then suddenly those players just can't score goals. They're not scoring, and they're drawing against, I don't know, I think if they have like a marquee game like the Crystal Palace one from that season when they were up 3-0 at half and then ended up drawing 3-3, I think that will be the sign of their demise, and ultimately their bottling of the Premier League for the second time in a while.
Yeah.
Getting back to the original question though, have Liverpool blown their chance at the first league title in 28 years? No, I don't think that they've blown it. They've made it a lot harder on themselves.
Yeah,
but I don't think that they've blown it.
They did blow a 7-point gap lately, and now they find themselves 1 point behind. That's obviously not great, but they're not out of it. They're still right in the thick of it. There's no, it's not like Spurs have dropped. They've got 2 losses lately, so they've dropped right back off. They're now 9 points behind them, so there's less pressure coming up from behind. It would be more worrying if Spurs were 2 points behind them, because then there's pressure coming from behind and pressure to stay on pace with the leaders. But now, they're gonna feel like all they have to do is chase, and they're gonna be pretty good at that, I think. So, we'll move on a little bit here to some upcoming games of the week. We talked a bit about Manchester United. We're going to talk a little bit more about them now. 2 huge fixtures coming up. So next, is it tomorrow or is it next week? Tomorrow they come up against Paris Saint-Germain. They lost at home 2-0 to this team. They were missing Edinson Cavani and Neymar Jr. to injuries. I don't believe Neymar is back.
No.
I don't know if Cavani is back, but
Cavani's also not back.
Okay, so same squads. It was a very, very disappointing game for them to lose 2-0 at home in the Champions League.
Especially with the form they were in.
Yeah, so that was Solskjaer's first loss as their manager, I believe, and this represents a huge challenge, but also can really be mark his dominance a bit if he can get them past this challenge of a Paris Saint-Germain team that obviously has spent tons of money always, but especially in the last couple seasons, to try primarily to win the Champions League, because their Ligue 1 in their domestic French league is pretty well locked up as it usually is.
I was gonna say as per usual.
Yeah. So
no Monaco, no Marseille.
Yeah. So I mean, there's not much pressure there. So if it's a big game for both teams tomorrow, because if Paris drop this game and crash out of the Champions League, that would be
a massive storyline.
Their season's no good.
Yeah, but it won't. There's no way in hell I see them losing tomorrow.
I can't see it either.
If you were to give me $100 and say bet on a result, I would say Paris going through. I just can't see
convincingly, or
I say they could easily win 2-3-0 tomorrow and go in 5-0 on aggregate. Just because when I saw them play at Old Trafford, I saw a team that was unlike Paris teams I've seen in the past, and I think Tuchel's done a great job with his team. And Marco Verratti is so underrated, actually. I never realized how good he was, really, until I watched that game, because his just midfield presence against Man U, against players like Pogba, who's obviously not available for this match, which another reason why I don't think they can go through. But his midfield marking and just, suffocating of these talented midfield players completely had them off their game. Also, I think you were telling me they're missing 10 of their starters, or not starters, but 10 of players who were typically, or no, it was Nick who was telling me, but they're missing 10 of their, 10 players who would typically make a starting lineup for them tomorrow.
For Manchester United.
Due to either injury, accumulation of yellow cards, Those are the only two things.
Suspension.
So suspension,
Well,
yeah.
Injuries and suspension.
But the big ones for me were Ashley Young. He's such an important wing back for them. Paul Pogba. He's probably one of the best players in the world right now. And Anthony Martial, who's another wide attacking, just force. And obviously he can do it against French teams.
Jesse Lingard is out as well.
So I just think the odds are just stacked against them.
Too much to overcome.
Yeah.
You've got your own personal problems in your own club, and then you've got a 2-0 deficit to overcome in Paris.
2 road goals too.
So that's another thing. They have to score 3 without conceding to.
No.
Sorry. So
They
have
have
to
to
score
score
at
two to go to
least. Sorry.
extra
So okay.
time,
So
yeah.
they have to score at least 2 to force
Extra time.
any sort of extra time.
It doesn't really matter if they concede.
The more
they have
they
to
concede,
score-
the more they have to score.
yeah.
And it's obviously not going to be an easy game away in Paris.
Never is for
Never.
any. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean their home record is phenomenal, partly because the teams they play against domestically aren't up to
Suck.
their standards. Hey, easy now. Not up to their standards. But then, we've seen them. They've been underperforming in the Champions League for a few seasons now.
But the thing I'd like to point out about those seasons when they underperform is they do great in the leg against in Barcelona when they play them at the Olympic Stadion, or I forget the name. I think that's where they play. And when
Parc des Princes.
or Parc des Princes, yeah, that's it. And when they play there, they do great. They won the game. What did they win? 4-1. And then they go to the
4-0.
4-0. Yeah. They win there 4-0, and then they go to
Camp Nou.
Camp Nou. It's escaping my head right now, and they lose 6-1. And then there's other years when they play Bayern and they do great at home, and then they go out to the Allianz Arena and they do terribly. I think their road form is what's killed them in the Champions League. So getting that 2-0 win at Old Trafford is huge for them because now you can go where you're comfortable, where you like to play. And I think this is almost a guaranteed.
Yeah, PSG's been able to do what they need to at home, but they haven't been able to hold serve away.
Exactly.
And that's what they were able to do even better this time. They were able to beat United 2-0. And I just don't see any scenario where United are able to overcome that on top of the injury issues that they have and suspensions.
Nemanja Matic, we left out too. He's also out injured, so we're probably going to see Scott McTominay in a holding position. Maybe Fred will feature. We haven't seen much from this season, but we're not going to see United's favored players, which is huge. It's so. I agree. It's completely stacked against them.
I just think we need to mention, I think there's 2 players on PSG that will be important. Both of them hungry for different reasons. Number 1, Kylian Mbappe wants to show he's one of the best players in the world if he already hasn't. And I think Di Maria might be a bit spiteful playing against the team that really didn't give him a chance.
He played unbelievable.
He's been playing well in general recently too.
We saw what he did.
The month.
We saw what he did in the first leg against United, though. He ran the show.
Got some beer thrown at him. Had a good time.
Had a few laughs.
It happens.
He had a good time. So huge game. We might be saying goodbye to.
We will be saying goodbye
to Manchester United in the Champions League.
I think we're unanimous in that pick. I believe, right? All of us are picking PSG.
I would agree.
I hate to see it.
It's
really.
just too much. Yeah.
And quickly, just before we jump on the other game tomorrow, Porto, Roma. Who are your picks? I personally think that Porto are going to be able to do it at home. What do you guys think?
They've got a 2-1 deficit at the moment.
I really like Roma. I don't know. I just like the way they play, and I'm going to take Roma, just also to be different than what you said. But I know you got to respect your Portuguese ancestors. So
hey, you know what? I'm not a Porto family, so that's okay.
Okay.
The away goal was huge for Porto, though they did lose to Benfica this weekend to drop to second place in the league. So that'll take the wind out of their sails a little bit. But obviously at home in Portugal, you never know. 2-1 is anyone's bet at this point for me.
I'll go with Porto. Can't say I really watched the first leg, but Roma really haven't impressed me that much this year.
Yeah, I think overall this is going to be a really interesting match.
It'll be a very good game.
Should be pretty well balanced.
Probably will watch that over the Paris.
I will.
Yeah.
I love a comeback, so I'm gonna.
That's fair.
I'll switch it if they score a couple
so you
goals.
can watch the Porto comeback.
We'll see. Well, yeah, I mean, that's much less.
I mean, if there's any club that's going to collapse like that, it's probably PSG.
And
that is true.
They are missing some key players themselves.
But their squad's also more deep.
I mean, I think they'll still do it. secondary, well, maybe not secondary to them, but the next huge game for Manchester United is coming up this weekend. They play Arsenal.
My boys.
Arsenal's second game in the Prem in a row, huge decider.
Okay.
Pretty.
Can I touch on some things?
Yeah,
If you want my true, honest opinion, I think Arsenal's really going to struggle in this game, and the biggest reason why, our best player this season, in my opinion, Lucas Torreira, out for the next 3 games, absolutely kills us.
Is that a suspension?
Yeah, because he got that red against, which in my opinion wasn't even a red, but we're not going to get into that right now. So yeah, he got a red in the 95th of 5 extra minutes.
I'm going to go ahead and turn down your volume.
Yeah,
just
sorry,
to
this
say
makes me great. Anyways, he got a red against Spurs, which I love to see because, I'm not a big fan of Spurs, but
really.
So
What do you think of them?
Tell us how you really feel.
yeah, we're not going to that's for the later show. But anyways, Torreira's out. We still don't really have a left back. Like we had Mustafi or right back, sorry, we had Mustafi there. In the North London derby, which he was just like an accident waiting to happen the whole game, and he was an accident. He conceded a pen, so I'll eat my own words, and I really would not be surprised if we lost the game or drew disappointingly at home. But I also wouldn't be surprised if we won like 4-0. So that's Arsenal.
Wow, that is so opposite.
But that's Arsenal. Like
yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll see. With the season they're having, they could be up and down, and they're kind of. I mean, it's huge. It's a game of huge importance. They're at home. They're in 5th place as of now, but if they win, they jump ahead of United into 4th. So a draw will see the table unchanged, but a win for United will see them put some distance. Arsenal, though, could overtake. A ton is on the line. I'm hoping we don't see the teams be too pragmatic and play out a draw. We could see sparks fly, or we could see something else. Now that Ole is in charge, though, I do think
that's what I was gonna say.
Hopefully, we see
That's
both
the X
teams
factor.
going for
If
it.
this was Mourinho versus Wagner, this would be, in my opinion, an absolute bore fest. But because it's Emery versus Solskjaer, it's gonna be, I think, an absolutely back and forth match. Lots of open, committed midfield. Because I think both managers understand the magnitude of the game, and getting a point for both teams doesn't really do much because it just keeps you where you are. I think the win is more valuable for both teams, and it's worth losing the 3 points to get the 3 points, I think. So
Absolutely. So hopefully we see him go head to head. Just about to finish up here. So Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has done a fantastic job at this club since coming in to replace Jose Mourinho, obviously. Depending on these results, or even as of now, do you guys think he should be given the job on a permanent basis going forward now into next season?
100%. I don't see any scenario at this point where they don't have him come on as full-time.
He does have another job. He's on a sabbatical.
wait, what's his
That's
other
fair.
job?
Well, he's a coach in Norway right now.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's got a full-time gig. They
What?
just kind of stole him away. But
Jeez,
I mean,
that's funny.
I feel like they could work around that.
I feel I'm Manchester United probably have a little bit more bargaining power
Yeah,
than,
you'd like to think.
than his current team. But yeah, Watson, what do you think? Is he going to be here next year?
I think it's all a matter of if they can convince anyone, any name like the likes of Zidane or Pochettino. I don't know how realistic those names are. Then I think you can't say no to that opportunity. Those are 2 world-class managers. But I think if you started the season next year with Ole, it certainly wouldn't be a bad thing.
Because we've yet to see really how he's kind of just doing his job right now, but we haven't seen him in a transfer market ever.
That's true.
We haven't seen how he'll deal with starting a season, trying to stay on pace, trying to maybe push for a title early. There's lots of question marks around him, but I would love to see him there
What
next
he's
year.
been able to do at this point in the season when he took over, I think he's done everything to deserve that opportunity.
I also agree, and I agree with the transfer market thing. I'd love to see what he could do in a window. I think with Mourinho, they just made a lot of reckless spending towards the end on players such as Fred, which have proven to be completely
I
worthless for them.
Do not understand that.
Yeah.
Well,
So
he's a promising player. Maybe he should get more chances.
but yeah, okay, that's for another debate, another day. But yeah, I'd love to see Solskjaer in his own window, see what he does with the team. That's my 2 cents.
As would I. Huge. Maybe we'll get a big title race for next season.
Yeah,
So that's it from us. We're gonna sign off here. So we've been episode 2 of the Final Whistle. I've been your host, Simon Kiszczuk, here with Kyle Watson, Kyle Cushman, and Nigel Gubechkin. Thanks so much for listening.